All right, Reza, we're going to get started with the watch. This is the 1977 6138 8020 that you've been interested in. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get it disassembled here. So we'll start with taking off the bracelet, of course. You had said you want to put this on a strap, which is a beautiful way to wear these. I love these on a cool strap. But you will of course get a cleaned and fully refurbished, get all this grime and stuff out of these bracelets. They tend to pick up material, but it's a nice way to see them start off this way, because it means it was original watch that hasn't been messed around with at all. So I'll take you through a very sort of thorough inspection of each component. We will go through all the hands and of course the dial. I will send you this crystal that's on the watch. I believe it to be perhaps an original, but it's been polished some in the past, and it's got some distortions and a little bit of a crack here. So we'll go ahead and replace that, of course. We'll get started into tearing down the watch and getting it ready for you. So that's exciting. All right, here we go. Okay, so now we're going to start taking the watch apart. So I'll try and make sure that I show you each component along the way as we do this. All right. So the first thing I do is, of course, look at the case back. So this was serviced, it looks like in 2011, so a number of years ago. Almost a decade now. Okay, well, let's get started. Alright, so this is the winding bridge, and it has these two very special screws that you have to keep track of to make sure that they don't get mixed in with the others, because they have a different pitch, and as such they can easily go into a spot they shouldn't go. Alright, now I always inspect every component as closely as possible before we reinstall anything, just to be sure that it's 100%. So, your magic levers for winding. There's some evidence of lubrication, which is good. That's what you want to see. Here's your bridge. Yeah, you can tell this was serviced at some point in its life, which is nice to see. All right. But that lubrication's gotten stiff over time, so. Okay, now it's time to decase. I've got those top components out. Oh boy. Well, it was worn, that's for sure. We'll clean all these pushers and other sealed elements up, along with your case. Original stem and crown. It's nice to see. And there we go. Oh, that's lovely. Very nice original 6138 dial. I'll show you the features of the hands as we start to get into the actual removal of them. What you have to look out for is the construction of the hands themselves. So the chronograph sweep hand has a very specific shape on the underside, actually, that has to be correct for it to be the right hand, and the chrono sub-register hands also have to show that particular construction. The other thing you have to look for on the dial in particular, and it's very hard to see because of the way it's done, but the tops of these markers are actually painted black with a polished, high polished chrome finish on the sides. And it's so high polished black on these that they look reflective, but in fact they are painted black. So that's one very telling thing. It's also the shape of the Seiko, the text, the nature of the Japan, of the A's in the Japan, how the spacing is on the fonts in these subs. That all contributes to understanding that it is an original and correct piece. But the best way to tell, of course, with the dial is to look underneath, to look at the date stamping. So we're going to take a very close look at that. Let's go ahead and protect your dial here. Let me show you what I mean on the underside of the chrono sweep. Hopefully you can see this. But it is a component-based hand. It is pressed together in such a way, and it has this tube that is not soldered in place. A lot of times you'll see them on the aftermarket, and that tube has been soldered to the actual hand body, but this is not. This is an actual tube that's correct for that style. Okay, let's go ahead and do your minute hand. Minute hand and hour hand are a little bit more subtle in their differences. In fact, they are very hard to tell, but the true tell is the relative thickness of the ends. They should be fairly narrow, and they have a particular length that's associated with them, plus the nature of the loom, the quality of the loom, and let's see if I can get this one. I'll flip it over in a moment. Let's go ahead and get it off of here. See if we can get it flipped. Yep. The way the loom is applied, the factory application of the loom, and the coloring, of course, matters as well. So this is definitely a correct Seiko hand. All right, let's go to your hour hand. This one, of course, as well. All right. Has the right proportions and the right looming, which is very good to see. We'll put those in a safe spot as we're working. All right, now we get to remove the recording wheel hands. We do that with some levers here. Zoom back out again so you can actually see what's going on. Take real care. Okay. And again, these have this very particular construction that you have to look for. Well, one of the other things is that a lot of times you'll see that so that's that two-part, again, non-soldered hand, which is nice to see. All right, and this one, of course, as well. And also this little silver center, they actually install that rivet, I think after they've painted it, so it doesn't have any paint on the rivet itself. There we go. Be very careful with those levers to not damage the dial, which we haven't, which is good. Okay, good. Well, your hands are off. Now, the moment of truth. Let's see what we have under this dial. The way Seiko did it was that dials, unless they were factory replacements, had numbers, dates stamped on them that correspond well close to the date on your case back. Generally, it's a month before, or perhaps even 2. All right, so I want you to take a very close look at this. This is a 7-3, so that means March of 77, and your dial is May of 77. So this is the dial that came on this watch from the factory. All right, so that's very nice to see. Wonderful. Look at the luster on that dial. Oh man, that is beautiful. That sheen of a factory Panda dial. I love it. All right, so we are in good shape. There's a very clean movement. It's in really nice shape. And we are going to go ahead and get started with the teardown. Okay, so the first thing I like to do is to remove your die shock. Okay, now we can go ahead and take off your balance. Let's take a close look before we remove it just to see its current condition. Hairspring looks nice and flat to start with. That's always a good sign. I always tell people whenever they come to me, when they come to me looking for a restoration for their watch, that the starting point is always a good determining factor for what's involved in a restoration. If you start off with a great watch that's in good shape, you're going to end up with a great watch that's in good shape. It just is hard to get away from that fact. The amount of work that's involved in bringing bad watches to a good state is sometimes a little overwhelming for those who own them. Now I'm going to take the pallet bridge and the pallet fork out of the watch. So this is the mechanism that goes tick-tock. That has a set of jewels that we need to lubricate at some point when we go to reconstruct. And I want to check the condition of those jewels as a way to determine how well we will look in the end. It looks pretty good. Pretty good. It's always hard to tell right away, but once we get it clean, it'll be fine. Then we'll know. Okay. All right, now we take off your chronograph upper bridge here. So what I look for here is the condition of this bushing to see if it's been made oblong by a lot of resets of the chronograph, and it's actually in very good shape. So that's nice to see. Here's your intermediate wheel, your minute recording wheel. Okay, so now we get into the chronograph components. Here's some springs. These springs are the reset lever spring, that's that one. We also have your hammer reset spring. That's that one. There are two springs associated with the hammer, one that returns it back and one that's used to reset the hammer. This is what changes your chronograph to its vertical, your chronograph hands to their vertical positions. You can see somebody's put quite a bit of lubrication on there at some point. These hands are so interesting. I mean, these components, oftentimes over time they get blue. I'm not sure why. Something to do with the materials that are used to coat them or to plate them. Often change over time. It doesn't change how they function, but certainly changes how they look. But it is of no consequence in terms of their functionality. All right. Lever on. Here's your column wheel screw. And we're going to remove your column wheel here. And it's bushing. A little bushing that sits in there that is important. We need to not lose it. And then I'll deal with that off the movement. Little cover plate that serves as a bushing for your intermediate wheel and covers up your jewels and bushings for your train of wheels. There we go. Oh, that's been jeweled. That's nice to see. Oh, right. This is 21 jewel. Third wheel bushing is jeweled on this movement. Your ratchet wheel for putting power into the mainspring, holding the power in the mainspring. This is your click spring. It all goes in the wash. Okay. Good. All right. So now let's take off your main plate bridge, train bridge here. There we go. Okay, now let's remove the most important component of this movement. This right here is your chronograph wheel, which is in very good shape. It's nice to see. That's perfect. Third wheel. Here's your escape wheel. Here's your barrel. Very good. Your mainspring lives in there. We'll get that taken apart and cleaned and refurbished. Check its condition, of course. There's your center wheel cock, and that is it for this side of the watch. We are ready to flip over and take care of the calendar side. Okay. Okay. I have to take a very close look at this C-clip here. I think I might be replacing this one. No, it's good. It's good. It's in good shape. They just put it on upside down, unfortunately. Whoever serviced the watch was not aware that it goes in one direction only. But that's okay. Just makes it a little more challenging to remove it. There's your Spanish-English day wheel. And now for your calendar side components. We have a couple plates that hold the date ring on with their associated tapered head screws. And those 4 screws removed. We are nearly ready. Here we go. Whoop, and there it is. There's your wheel. Removed itself. And the jumper spring. Okay. Now we have to take off this upper plate, which is your calendar plate, and reveal all of the components that are either associated with the winding mechanism, the date setting mechanism, otherwise known as a keyless works, and all the components that are associated with your hour recording wheel and your chronograph feature. So that's all of these. So there are 3 screws associated with that. 1. They're longer and they have different head shapes. 2. 3. Okay, 1. 2. 3. And they're very shiny, which is nice. Okay, so there we go. That's that plate removed. There's your hour recording wheel. Hour wheel. Here's your intermediate wheel, which is in good shape. It's nice to see. You have to inspect for any missing teeth or issues on any of these wheels. Sometimes you see, if somebody didn't do a very good job, you see that sometimes the teeth can be bent, which is a bad sign. I had a watch come in once that would stop at some point, and it was only happening sort of once every day or twice a day, and the owner was very concerned, and it turned out it was a tiny little bent tooth on a wheel, which is not great. Great. So let's go ahead and start breaking these components down. You got a spring here, and some levers need to come off. One lever. These are part of the reset feature of the hour recording wheel. Second lever. This little dancing lever here. It looks to me like it's somebody dancing, so that's what I call it. There's your spring. This is your stop mechanism. It arrests the hour wheel. It's not supposed to be functioning. There we go. Okay, now for your keyless works. No keys in this movement. It's keyless. Got to be a little bit careful with this. There's a spring that sits underneath of this plate that provides force on your yoke, which is part of the winding mechanism. You got to be very careful you don't lose that spring. Just there we go. Didn't lose it. It's always good when you don't lose a spring. Okay, so there's your quick date mechanism. There's your yoke. There's your little, I don't know, boomerang? Not sure what that's called. There's your setting lever. Take out your crown and stem, and there's your winding pinion. On this, it is actual winding, so it's a hand winder as well, which is nice. One of my favorite things about these movements is they do hand wind. Let's go ahead and take your cannon pinion off. Okay, with that, your center wheel pops down, pops out, and we are done with this assembly. So that's your watch in pieces, ready to be put into the cleaner. So we'll come back when all the parts are clean and start with reassembly. All right, we are out of the cleaner, so now it's time to start putting your movement together. What I like to do is first set the cannon pinion, which means I have to put on the center wheel, and then I can build out all of the components that are part of your keyless works, which goes here, and your accessories that help the hour recording wheel of your chronograph function. So that starts with lubricant on all of these pivots. So first thing we're going to do is do your keyless works, because that sits below all of the other components. So, lubricate all your pieces here. Sorry about that. Winding pinion. Now we can set your yoke in place. That gets some lubrication on the end. Now for your quick date change components. We need your boomerang. shepherd's crook. Okay. Alrighty. Go ahead and put this in place. Looks good. Mm-hmm. Right. Now for your keeper. All right. Now this must go into place. Right. Let's check the function. That's exactly right. Day and date change, time setting, winding. Perfect. All right. So that's your keyless works built out. Looks good. Put one more drop of fluid here. Make sure everybody's nice and lubricated. Good. Okay, so now the next part is to build out our recording components for your chronograph. So first pieces are stop lever, and your reset arm. Next up is the pin that runs the reset. So that has to then go here. Come on, play nicely. There we go. Now. There we go. Dropping in. Looks good. All right, let's put some lubrication on here. So that arm, which is actuated by this arm, is properly engaging. There we go. Okay, let's set your wheel in place. Okay. Now your spring. Come on. Everybody act correctly here. There we go. Seems good. Perhaps we're, yeah, there we go. Good. Oh. Okay. All right, now for your minute wheel. And your intermediate wheel. Drive your date change mechanism. Goes right here. All right, now we need your lower die shock setting to be in place. So we'll get that lubricated and set in place. Right. We have a special oiler for this process, which is really quite fantastic. Doing this job. There that goes. All right. Now I need your setting spring. Here we go. Now it's time to put this back in place again. Really wants to pop. Okay. Good. Good, good, good. I may have to adjust that later. All right, now it's time for your retaining plate. Your upper plate for this goes here, and so we got to get the alignment right. And then it's down to our 3 screws. Oh, darn. Yeah, sometimes it takes a little finesse. A little bit of finesse sometimes to get things where you want them. Good. Right. Okay. Everything seems to be working. The way you want. That's good. Okay, now two more dome-headed screws, and then we flip the movement and work on the train side until we get that built out, and then we come back to the calendar side and finish that. So it's a multi-step process here. You don't want to get too ahead of yourself on one side over the other. Okay, so that's great. Keyless works, still working as it should. take this off and lubricate it. Star wheel here, which needs to come off and get a little bit of lubrication. There we go. And put that right back on. All right. Good. Okay, so now let's flip and start to build out your train of wheels. Okay. So let's drop your barrel. It's been cleaned, lubricated, and put back into its original state with good new synthetic lubricants. Okay, now your third wheel must go in. Make sure everything's clean, free of any dust or small particles. Come on. Go back. There you go. And now for your escape wheel. Another component that needs to be checked and rechecked. This is a very essential component and it needs to be spotlessly clean. Any dust or dirt or small detritus will lead to problems with its function and will rob your movement of power and accuracy. And now for your all-important chronograph wheel, which needs to be lubricated. Here and here. Okay. Let's check it. It's also your fourth wheel of your movement, and so it's an extremely important component as well. The most important, in fact. Now, one thing we cannot forget is your winding intermediate wheel, which goes right here. Good. All right. Next up is your train bridge. Everything looks good, so in we go. All right, gently coerce your wheels to find their pivot holes, their jewels. Ever so gently apply pressure and then move the components so that they are in the proper locations on both sides of the movement. Sometimes it helps to give a little rotation. Sometimes it just helps to go in and manipulate them directly. All right. come back off again. I had a feeling it was your third wheel. Sometimes it just gets itself out of sorts, and then you have to go in and convince it to fall back into its jewel on the far side on the main plate. There it goes. Okay. No more of that, please. Okay. Looking good so far. Let's get our pegwood here and apply very small amounts of convincing pressure. There we go. That's the click we were looking for. Perfect. Alright, so now we slowly add screws. Not tightening all the way, but just getting it snug. Checking rotation. Yep, that's good. Everybody's happy. So we add another. And slowly go with this. Again, checking. Good. It's always good to check. In a lot of ways, this is like carpentry. It's better to check many times and measure multiple times than cut and regret. Last check. Yes. So we nip these down. Make sure everybody's nice and tight. Good. Good, good, good. Good. Okay. So I like to see nice smooth action. Okay. Now we lubricate your jewels. Make sure everybody's nice and lubricated. Here on your mainspring arbor, we'll give it a quick flip over and lubricate this side. There's one. There's two. And 3 jewels. All right. Now we can build out your chronograph components. One more spin. Very good. Right. Okay. So components necessary for keeping the power in your mainspring. Here's your click. All right, now we can build out everything associated with your very important chronograph features. I have to get some lubrication on all the important components here. Need your crown wheel, and it needs to be lubricated. Oops, sorry about that. Now, stay in place. Okay. Lubricate your mechanisms. one's always a challenge on the 6 1/3/8 because it's got to interact with both your chronograph wheel and the lever that comes through to the hour side. And it's always a challenge to make that fit. Come on. It comes off so easy. There it goes. Okay, that's good. Yes. Okay. Put some proper lubrication at that junction. Okay. Set your plate. And its screw. There we go. Now, put your hammer in place. We'll get your other components put in. Make sure everybody's nice and clean. No greases in bad spots that shouldn't be. Alright. Here we go. Let's go ahead and place your hammer. There we are. And now we need its spring. And your lever spring, of course. Put your hammer spring on. Come on. Come on. Good. And your lever spring. Get on your perch. Everybody's happy. There we go. Okay. Now, we need the last two pieces for the chronograph, which are your minute recording wheel. Slides. Might put a little lubrication on that. Boy, that went in so easy the first time. There we go. All right, now your intermediate wheel. This transfers the click over function of the chronograph to the minute recording wheel from the center wheel, or the chronograph wheel, through a little finger that pushes that along. All right, now we put your bridge in place, which is a fun moment because now we get to watch how the features become free and rotate. Sort of centers all the pieces here and make sure that everybody's where they're supposed to be. This one plate here, which is really nice. There we go. Freewheeling already, which is good to see. What makes chronographs a bit challenging is that you have to get all the way to this point in order to check the running of the train. And sometimes you have to tear the whole thing down in order to check a piece or a component that might be acting badly, misbehaving, if you will. And that can be a challenge. So you got to be very careful all along the way in order to make sure that all the pieces are doing what they're supposed to do. But I think we're pretty close. I have confidence that everybody's going to act well. So one adjustment we're going to have to make potentially, and that's to your spring that puts the resistance on your chronograph hour recording wheel, but that shouldn't be a problem. All right, I'm going to turn off your chronograph feature and give your mainspring a bit of a twist. Oh yeah. That is exactly what we want to see. Nice, smooth running train. You can engage your chronograph. Look at that, perfect. There we go. Disengage there, let's reset. Okay. Good. Good. All right, so everybody's functioning. That's exactly what we want to see. Excellent. Okay. Now what's next is your palette fork and your balance. So we need to lubricate your palette fork. It takes a moment. It's a delicate business, but it needs to be done and done properly, or it can actually lead to, if it's not done properly, it leads to issues with actually slowing the movement if it's not lubricated well. It's such a small piece, it's so susceptible to the grease that you put on that you really have to be careful. So we will be careful. tiny, tiny, tiny amount of lubrication on this very delicate piece. There we go. All right. Okay, let's check. Looks good. That one little tiny piece holds the entire mainspring in place. All the power transfers through that one set of jewels. All right, again, we tighten gently, check for function, which is good, and then we go ahead and place another screw, tighten that. My goodness, my dogs are so loud. Sorry about that. Okay, let's make sure that everybody's tightened down. Good. Now we can put some permanent power into the mainspring. And now we have to lubricate your die shock setting that is for your balance pivot on this side of the movement. All right. Handy dandy oiler does its job. And there we go. All right, now we're going to set your balance in place. It's been sitting here patiently, wondering when its turn was. Now its turn is up. The last look here, make sure everybody's clean and happy. Oops, sorry about that. All right, let's see how it does. See if we've got a heartbeat here. Oops. Hold on. Get in place. Get in place. There we go. Okay, we're moving. Let's get some screws in. Put your die shock setting in. Come on. There we go. All right. Last piece for this is your spring for your die shock. Okay. Now I have to kind of be right over this thing to get it right. So excuse me for a moment. running movement. So let's check how we did. Okay, well, here are your numbers straight out of the gate. Just got the balance dropped in, and we're looking really good. Got a little bit of rate change here, you know, gaining a little time, but amplitude looks good as the lubrication sort of settles in place. Go ahead and give this a few little adjustments here and there. See how we do. I mean, 230s. That's a sign of a good movement, in my opinion. This will turn out really nice. There we go. Clean signal. Good start. This is a really good start. Yeah. All right. So it's going to do its sort of up and down oscillation before it gets itself settled, but it'll get nicely settled into good numbers here, I'm confident. Okay, so a couple things to check as we go. Oh yeah, this is good. Oh, that's right. All right, so we're good. All right, so I'm going to let this run in a little bit, and we'll come back. Okay, Reza, I'm really happy with the way things are running, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the reconstruction of your calendar side and all the components that make up the final pieces of the watch. So, just a few things to put on, and we'll be ready to go. A little bit of lubrication on some components here. All right, let's get your really nice date wheel in place. Whoops, first I jumped ahead of myself. I've got to put this in place first. There we go. Just drop one more drop of lubrication on here. Okay, so my camera battery died, so I had to plug it in. I don't know what we missed, but we're still just putting on the final plates here for the calendar components. All right, last plate. Right on. All right. Well, here we go with your day wheel. Make sure that's nice and clean. Good. Okay. Now, you have to get your jumper in the right place. There we go. Okay, now it's time for your C-ring. Chamfered side down. And there we go. All right, let's check your change function here. There's quick date and day. Works great. All right. Check your, oops, midnight change. All right, should be date first. There we go. And now the day. Perfect. Okay, that's great. And winding, of course, it's working just great. Right. Well, now comes the fun part. We get to put the dial and hands back on, which is a tricky business, so I'm going to do that off camera and then come back. Okay, Reza, we're about to finish your watch. Reach the final stage here of assembly, which we do with the watch in the case, in fact. So, your reduction gear and your plate, spacer. Winding framework. Okay, let's get your framework cleaned up here. and your winding weight. Alrighty. Put your lovely case back. Whoop, almost forgot your seal. Brand new seal for your case back. Proper Seiko seal. Put a little bit of grease on there. Silicone grease. Make sure it's nice and watertight, as watertight as we can get, considering these are 50-year-old surfaces that are no longer guaranteed watertight. Alright, there we go. Give everything one last little clean. And with that, we are done. There is the service of your brand new to you 6138 8020 Panda, which I think has come out just stunning. These are such beautiful watches, and I think you're going to love this one. Alright, so let's just go over, like we do here at the end, to give you some tips and ideas about the watch and show you what was done. Okay, so overall, as you've seen in this video, it's a full service to the watch, lubricated with all synthetic Moebius-based lubricants that are appropriate for this caliber. You have new seals everywhere, pushers, crown, and case back. You have a new crystal. This is a lovely flat replacement crystal. The watch is functioning perfectly. You have hand winding here, as well as winding through your automatic works. And so the watch is, again, warranted for the service. Of course, my warranty cannot cover water tightness simply because of the watch's age, but you know, it is as good as it was the day it was made in terms of the quality of the seals and the materials. But again, I can't guarantee watertight. The chronograph functions properly. You'll see the minute counter here turn over as we pass midnight. And just as a tip, what I like to say is that these watches, of course, are approaching 50 years old. Not quite there. I don't want to age you too much because I think this is a birth year watch for you. So there it goes, flipping over. Now, what I always recommend is run the chronograph, start and stop it wherever you like. That's fine. If you want to let it run, that's actually a good mode to run the watch. However, what I do recommend is that anytime you stop the chronograph and you want to put it back to vertical or back to its starting position, that's with the lower pusher, always do that as close to midnight for the center sweep hand as possible. So anywhere between 11 and 1 is okay, but outside of that zone, you're running into the possibility of damaging both the hand and the chronograph wheel. And once you do that, it's game over for the watch. You have to buy a new chronograph wheel, which is the expense of a movement, and so that is a serious no-no. And so what we do is we re-center the watch here, and everything is as it should be. You can then, of course, restart it, and there we go. So I really appreciate your interest in the watch, and this video is coming to you as well as the watch and a 1-year warranty on the service. So thank you again, and I hope you really enjoy it. It's a fantastic watch. It's just the most beautiful example, cleaned up so nicely. This lovely case has all of its original lines. Very, very nice. Here's your freshly cleaned bracelet. That, of course, comes with the watch. Its end links are here. I've put them on wires so they stay in place. Here are the two original pushers. Or the end, bar ends here, the ends. So spring bars, I mean to say. So I'll go ahead and put these on the watch so you'll have them for your new strap. And yeah, thank you again. Enjoy. All right, take care.